Which branch of the service?
As a United States Marine.
What was your highest rank?
I was a corporal, E4.
Can you tell me in which general locations you were located?
In Vietnam or in general?
Well, first in the United States and then in Vietnam.
In the United States, I went to boot camp at Paris Island. After that, went to infantry training in Camp Lejeune. Was deployed to go to Vietnam. Went to Camp Pendleton, but there I was put on hold and ended up going to language school to learn Vietnamese in Monterey, California, to Defense Language Institute. I was there until such time that I graduated and made my way to Vietnam. And then in Vietnam, I was in 3rd Marine Division, 3rd Reconnaissance Battalion, located in Quang Tri Province in Northern I Corps on the DMZ.
Bill, can you tell me how you got in the service? Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted from as early as I could remember. I always wanted to be a Marine, and grew up on that post-World War II thing. My father was a World War II vet. He had been in the Army, but I was always very, felt that I needed to serve, and I wanted to do it as a Marine.
Why did you pick the Marine Corps?
Must have been too many John Wayne movies. I don't know. I just always, from as long as I can remember, I think it's my oldest brother, several of his friends had been Marines, and I just wanted to be part of the best. So.
Where were you living at the time you enlisted?
In Ossining, New York, Westchester County.
Do you recall the date you enlisted?
I went in on February 21st, 1968.
So once you enlisted, did you immediately go to boot camp?
Yes.
And what was Paris Island like? How long was your training? What did they teach you? What was it like?
We learned to become a basic Marine. Was there for, at that time, boot camp was like 8 weeks. We were there for like 9 weeks, a week of forming. It was very intense, to say the least. But there are things that I learned there that, I guess at that young age, things stick with you for the rest of your life.
Is it what you had expected all those years?
I had friends, a friend who had just returned from Vietnam and actually had gotten discharged from the Marines, who tried to talk me out of it up until the night before I left. And he had finally said, well, if you're going to go, these are the things you need to remember and know. And when the first drill instructor got on the bus and told us we had 20 seconds to get off. If you had any cigarettes, put them out. Any gum, swallow it. You have 20 seconds to get off, and 5 are gone. Everything my friend told me kind of went right out. Got left in the seat in the bus. So that was,
Do you remember any of your instructors from boot camp?
Yes. My senior drill instructor was Staff Sergeant Stuchel. The assistants were Sergeant McKinney, Sergeant Horowitz, and near the end we got somebody else, Sergeant Portovitz.
You have any memorable experiences from Paris Island?
Oh, they were all memorable. But I guess because I went to Catholic grammar school and high school, so I was used to some kind of rigid discipline. I used to, because there was a lot of testing going on, not just physically, but there was a lot of things you had to learn. So I would so whenever you weren't doing something, you had your guidebook to study. So I would just try and commit it to memory, and then just daydream about some of the things that they had said to us, and what does that really mean? If you've ever seen the movie Full Metal Jacket, the first 45 minutes of the movie boot camp, that is pretty much what it was like, except that it was for 16 hours a day, every day.
Did you have a graduation?
Yes.
Did your parents come down?
Yes, my parents came. my sister came, who was a former Marine herself, and her husband and kids. So that was pretty good.
And where did you go after boot camp?
Then, because I was infantry, I went to Camp Lejeune for advanced infantry training for another 8 weeks or so.
What was that like?
That was less stress, just more training to learn your new profession of being an infantryman. And yeah, that you still had that boot camp mentality of, you know, not living in fear, but just always on the edge. But it started becoming your NCOs that were in charge weren't the same as drill instructors. They would at least just talk to you. You didn't have to constantly be at attention.
After Camp Lejeune, where did you go?
Came home on leave for 20 days, I guess it was, and then on July 11th, 1968, I left for Camp Pendleton to go to staging out there to get deployed to Vietnam. And then once I arrived there, going through staging, which was, if you were with all your buddies from boot camp, it didn't work out well because you just were online, and when you got up to the desk, they just took your records, and it was either 1st Division, 3rd Division, 1st Division, 3rd Division, 1st Division, 3rd Division, 9th MAB. So if you were all in line, you ended up going to different divisions for the most part. But at that time, I was also pulled aside to go to language school in Monterey, California.
Did you have an aptitude for languages? Were you
I guess they thought so. Because, well, yeah, in high school I took French, but that has nothing to do with Vietnamese. But in the testing that you took while you were in boot camp, there was a test that they gave you a made-up language. I mean, I remember. And you had to, you know, form sentences, read, you know, basically a paragraph or whatever. So I guess I did well in that. And so I was on hold there in Pendleton for a month or so until they had enough people that were coming through the process that they kept pulling people in. And then in August, there were, I think, like 53 or 56 of us. We finally went to Monterey, California. And the language school was it was run by the Army, but everybody was there. It was Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines. But the Marines, we were just the 50 of us. We were kind of a small group.
And the main goal was to teach you Vietnamese?
Yes. We took a short course, which was like, I think it was 12 weeks. So it was from when you got to class at 8 o'clock or so in the morning until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That was it. You were dressed in Vietnamese and spoke Vietnamese and wrote it all day long.
So you had 12 weeks to learn the language?
Yeah. They had longer courses there, but again, they were just trying to push people to the front.
Did you have to learn to speak it, read it, write it, or all?
All. You had to learn to, you know, first you learn to read and write.
So how did you do?
When I was in school, I could read and write fairly well, but I didn't speak that well. Then I went to Vietnam, cut through it all. I went one time to be an interpreter at a village with one of my friends who had been in a class after me. And everyone there that we needed to deal with could speak English. So that kind of ruined it.
So you didn't even use that training?
Well, then for a while in Vietnam, I was on a temporary assignment in Da Nang. And at that point, I got to deal with more civilians. So I would practice with the house girls or whatever, the people that worked on the base. And so then I could speak better, but then I lost my ability to read or write because I just wasn't doing it anymore.
Did you go immediately from Monterey to Vietnam?
I did have a break just before graduation. I broke my ankle, so I ended up being on hold for a little while there, and then I went to the Marine Barracks at Treasure Island, San Francisco, and I was an outpatient at the Oakland Naval Hospital. But then from there, I went directly to Vietnam, so I never came home again.
Where did you land in Vietnam?
In Da Nang.
What was your first impression?
Well, we left because the flight went from California to Okinawa. We were there about a day or so, and then on to Vietnam. And we left like, I don't know, 3 o'clock in the morning. And when the pilot said, we're now over, we're approaching Da Nang, I really expected to look out the window of the plane and see nothing but, flares and stars and bursting bombs. I looked down and there was street lights and there was traffic, and because it was a city, But then when we landed at the airport and they put us on cattle cars to take us to go get processed, and we had to go a distance, and now it was like 7 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden it was like being in a movie, because it was just thousands of people on the street, with the pointy hats and carrying things on a stick over their shoulder, and a different smell, the smell of smoke and incense, and the only thing that was missing was a soundtrack, and it was just like, wow, I'm here, and it was hot. So,
because you must have landed in, it's still 1968. What month did you go to Vietnam?
Oh, I finally got there in March. Yeah, March of 69. Oh, no, February 69.
February?
Yeah.
Once you landed, where did you go? Had you been assigned to a unit?
Well, while I was in at the Marine barracks, most of the people that were in the barracks there were transients waiting to get discharged for medical reasons, because they got wounded in Vietnam or whatever. And I made friends with a couple of them, and one in particular was a recon Marine. So he told me, look, you're a grunt, you're infantry MOS. When you get to Vietnam, you're gonna get there, there's gonna be a desk and you can go volunteer to be in recon. And he said, do that. He said, go there. He goes, people will tell you, well, it's no good, because in reconnaissance, you go to 6-man team out into the jungle or whatever. And he said, it's much better because it's harder to find 6 of you than if you just go with the infantry. You're probably going to end up in the 9th Marines, and they just die. And, the grunts are out there 100 at a time. Everybody knows where they are. So you go to recon, it's much better. Meanwhile, he lost his thumb. So on the flight over, I ran into this friend, somebody I had become friends with when I was on hold in language school. And so I told him, hey, look, when we get there, this is what we got to do. Did I talk to this guy? Just a straight scoop. We're going to volunteer for recon. So he's like, yeah, okay. So we get there, and they collected everybody's record books. And where's this desk that we can go to? There is no desk. They just took everybody's records, and now they came back and they just started in alphabetical order, calling out your name. And it was, if you were infantry, you were going to 9th Marines, 9th Marines, 4th Marines, 3rd Marines, 9th Marines, 9th Marines, because they did need replacements. And they were working their way down. And then they get to my friend, whose name happened to be Moser, M-O-S-E, so he was right in front of me. And they said 3rd Recon. It's like, wow.
Had you volunteered for that?
No, well, we wanted to, but nobody asked us. So all of a sudden, he got it, and he was like, wow. And I'm like, yeah, what are the odds? They called my name next, and I was 3rd Recon too, so we were all giddy happy. And then we got our order, they gave us back our orders and told us we needed to get transportation to Dong Han, where to go in the airport to get it. And we went there, and we were so proud. Well, we had our stateside utility, so everybody knew we just got there. And of course, we're waiting at the airport to catch this plane, and everybody else there is all battle weary, faded out utilities, cabins. And of course, they were all like, hey, Nick, where are you going? Oh, we're going to 3rd Recon. 3rd Recon, what are you kidding me? I see them bring those guys back on a stake, and they start going to all these horror stories. So after a while, we're not quite as vocal about where we're going. And then get a little emotional. all of a sudden, this guy comes up to us, kind of little guy. He's all, he got, his camouflage utilities on, but he's got like a camouflage neckerchief and sunglasses, and he comes up and he goes, "Hey, Nix, where you going?" So we're not quite as, well, we're going to 3rd Recon. He goes, "I'm in 3rd Recon." You're going to the right place. So we felt a little better, and then he just disappeared. So when we finally get up to there, we get off the plane up there, and they're going to have to take us to Quangtree, which is, 5-6 miles away. And the truck driver says, we don't normally take fire, but if we do, just make sure you get down. And it's like, whoa, And so we got to our battalion, and we checked in. And I just throw this in because it's still memorable. We hadn't eaten, and it was like maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So they said, "Yeah, I'd be eating." So I said, "No." So they said, "Okay, go over to the chow hall and tell them to give you something to eat." And they made us peanut butter and jelly on this big fat bread, but it was really good. Anyway, because I'll just keep going on. We got assigned to a company, both of us, to the same company, and when we went over there, we were checking in, and so they said, "Okay, go get Corporal Landy to take him around and draw their equipment and stuff." And lo and behold, it's the guy we met in Da Nang.
Did he remember you?
Oh yeah, it only been a couple hours. So anyway, he took us around, and I look back at being such an ass now. Like we went to the armor to get our rifles, and they gave you a rifle, and they gave you all your magazines and everything for it. And I didn't say anything until we got outside. I said, "There's bullets in these magazines." Because up to that point, when you were in boot camp or anywhere, any ammunition was accounted for. You had, if they gave you 10 rounds to fire, then you had to bring back 10 shell casings. You were never allowed to have just never had it. And now all of a sudden they're giving me all these magazines with 20 rounds of M16 ammunition in them. And he's like, "Where do you think you are?" He goes, "This is Vietnam." He goes, "Every place you point that rifle is downrange now. It's not like before, But he wasn't, he was just like being kind about it. Like, he wasn't, like you're a total idiot. But it's like, dude, he was from Bronx, and he was a pretty cool guy.
What was his name?
George Landy.
Landy?
Yes, Landi. He ended up getting killed in, I think, sometime in June '69.
Now, the friend that you were staying with, did you end up staying with him?
We ended up in different teams. We were he was in the 1st platoon, I was in the 3rd platoon. So, but we got, when we were back, we got to still socialize and stuff. But then with recon, you're a team. In the infantry, it'd just be a squad. To us, it was a team.
So tell me, give me some description of what a recon team consists of, what you do, what the missions are.
We would go out usually between 6 and 8 man teams, and we would be inserted out in the jungle. And our main mission was to go out there and try and gather intelligence, find North Vietnamese army groups, bunker complex or whatever. And, we'd be out for like a week, and we would report on whatever we found. We were constantly feeding information back on the radio. So they would give us a RZ, a reconnaissance zone of like about 4 square kilometers, and we would work our way through that area during the week to see whatever we could find.
How long would you stay out in the field?
Normally the patrols were supposed to last like about a week, 5 or 6 days. Then you come back and you get a couple of days off and then go back out again. Sometimes they lasted a day because we'd get out there and we'd end up getting in contact or something. The recon mission was compromised because nobody's supposed to know you're there. So if they knew you were there and we knew that they knew we were there, they would take us back out, or we got shot out. Sometimes I mean, there were times when we were out, we were compromised, they knew we were there, and we just, for lack of a better word, we didn't run, but we relocated to somewhere until we could get them off our
Where
tail.
does the desk job come into this?
Pardon me?
Did you ever see that desk job?
The who?
The desk job?
No. No.
You got bad intel there.
Yeah. So, so on the recon mission, some of the other ones, it wasn't particular to my team, but we did help out another team. They used to go out and plant these listening devices, electronic devices up on the DMZ that could kind of count people walking by. And that was a lot of equipment that they had to bring. So one time I went with them to help, to be security for them more than anything else.
Did you stay with the same team your
Yes.
entire time in Vietnam?
Yeah.
So how many men were in your team?
Over the course of time, probably about 10, because some people came, some people left. So I guess the other thing of going back to the team is that becomes your family or whatever, because you're together all the time. So even people that don't, you may not get along and not really care for it, still part of it's like having that uncle that you don't arrange, that you don't like, they're still part of the family. So you become very bound together, and it lasts. For some people you had less you were better buddies with, but it was still part of the.
You came pretty close.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about some of your missions? Can you remember any specific missions? Because if you went out that often, you had a lot of missions when you were in Vietnam.
Well, sometimes you did, sometimes you didn't. There'd be other things. I went to school while I was there to learn some other things about demolitions, whatever. But it was my very first patrol, and the team I ended up in, my team leader's name was Bob Scheidel. He was a corporal, and he had been there for close to 18 months. He had been there, done a tour, and then signed up for extended another 6-month tour. And he had run a lot. He had run like 48 patrols or something like that, which is really a lot. And he had a different attitude than a lot of the other team leaders. He took us in because he got me as a new guy, and then another guy came a couple of days later. And he treated us like equals right off the bat. It wasn't that, you're new. It was just, you're part of the team now, so that's it. There were people who had that attitude that, oh, you're new, so, we can just dump on you. And so we did some more training before I got to go out. And then finally, we had enough guys for a full team. We got our marching orders to go out. And so the night before, because we were going to the Ashaw Valley, which a lot of people have to know that name because a lot of things happen there, and he was one of them said, well, you guys are going to get your cherry busted on this because it's a bad place. Okay, we're Marines. So we went out. I can give you the funny part first. When we got inserted, we would use Army Huey helicopter slick. So you'd have half the team on one, half the team on another one. So the senior guys got to sit in the doors with their legs hanging out, but this other guy, we had to sit in the middle because we were new. So anyway, we get to where we're landing, but the helicopters couldn't set down because the elephant grass was probably like 10 feet high. So it kind of matted it down with the wash. So the first guys in the doors, they jumped off. Well, I didn't know about having ammunition. That helicopter, that lost a lot of weight. So it went up. And I jumped off and I was like, whoa. So I land, and so, the helicopters leave, the grass goes back up, and they go, come on, I said, I can't get up. And they're like, because they didn't know, and I had a broken ankle, and they're like, is it your ankle? No, it's the weight. I can't get up. Because we carried enough food and water and ammunition and everything to last you a week, so I had all this crap on my back. So they all thought it was fun. Anyway, on the first patrol, my initial thing, my first night was we would have 2 men on watch, and it was my first time on watch, and you're in the jungle and it's totally pitch black, except for this little rotting stuff on the floor that kind of glows like a firefly kind of thing. You see all these little light spots. So I'm sitting there listening, and all of a sudden we had with us a Kit Carson scout who was a Vietnamese, basically soldier who worked with us. And all of a sudden I feel his hand on my shoulder. It was like an Abbott and Costello. And it was Teal. Oh, I just want to make sure you're awake. Don't worry, I'm awake. So, anyway, but then we went on with the patrol, and we were right on the Laotian border, and we came across this bunker complex, and we were trying to get a fire mission artillery to blow it up. And Bob was good about that. He, especially for whatever reason, we kind of bonded right off the bat more than he did with the other guy. He kept bringing me up to date on what was going on, because we set up like in a 360. We were spread out in a little bit in the jungle area about the size of this room. And we were trying to get this fire mission, but they kept putting it off and putting it off. So we were sitting there for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. And they knew we were there. And the first guy that got taken out was Bob. So that was kind of dramatic, because everybody started, opened up. We didn't even know what the hell we were shooting at. We just knew that it came from there.
Were there other casualties in your unit?
No, he was the only one. But so I went to him and made the rookie mistake and just bent it over. Somebody else who was senior was like, no, get him out of there. Which is obvious, because obviously somebody just shot him. They knew where he was. So I dragged him, but he was, unfortunately, he was dead already. So we had to get out of there. And this mountain that we had gone down the side of, which probably the night before we had been down there and went back up, probably took us like 45 minutes to get back to the top. We did it probably, seems like we did it in about 5 minutes, but we ended up just dumping all our gear except for our rifles and that. And I carried him back up, dragged, whatever, to get back up so we could get helicopters to get out and get that adrenaline going. Got up there because the other guys who had gotten one of the other team members, this guy Fred Oakes, mom, he stayed with me as my security as I was carrying him. The other guys went to try and secure a place so we could get out of there. And so they finally got in and got us out. And, we all piled into one helicopter this time. But, we landed back at Vandergrift Combat Base, which they had fire bases, some larger than others. It had kind of replaced Caisson. And, they just came. We got off the helicopter. 2 corpsmen came with a body bag and a stretcher. They just pulled them off the helicopter and put them in a body bag and took a 155 casing full of water, just douched it through the helicopter to wash the blood away. That was it. And, we went down to the assistant team leader, one of the other guys. They went to get debriefed, and the rest of us went down to this LZ to get a helicopter back to our compound. And, it was we were crying. And, because Recon Marine is like the pinnacle of success in the Marine Corps. We're all camouflaged up in that. And all these other guys, other Marines, they just, I hate to get emotional. They just came, they came and they gave us their condolences. We were just a bunch of kids.
Well, that was a heck of a first mission for you.
Yeah, and stuck with me all these years. So we finally got back to our compound, and by the time we got back, they had already removed all his stuff from the hooch. It was probably a good thing. But everybody was stunned because he had been there a long time. Everybody knew him. He was really well liked, respected. So then,
were you the only new guy on the team?
No, there was one other guy who was, we'll get into it. I was definitely impacted by the whole thing. But then, life went on, it was like, hey, we got a new team leader within a week, somebody else, and then just started running more patrols. But, we had patrols that who the heck knows where we were, but we were out for a week and it rained every day. And, one of the, things, we'd be out and it'd rain, and guys would open up their packs, take out their poncho or something. But this one guy in the team, Fred Oaks, we called him Mom, because he took care of everybody. He would never do it. He would just stand there and get wet. But then I learned real quickly that it was because when it stopped raining and we went to move out again, take that poncho off, you walk 10 feet through the jungle, you're soaking wet. And now your poncho's wet. So at night, because when we set up at night, we just basically, like we were a deer or something, we just laid on the ground and went to sleep. I've slept in the rain with a poncho wrapped around me, but just laying on the ground. There's, we didn't dig any holes or anything like that. So you look like an animal out there. Because nobody's supposed to know you're there, so you kind of can't disturb things. So Mom was smart. At least his stuff, when he wanted to go to sleep, he could wrap up in it and it was still dry. But anyway, we were out and it rained all week long. The radios weren't working and everything. And we had to walk back. Normally helicopters would come and get us. But this time we had to walk to they had radio relays on tops of mountains. So we had to walk back to this place. And in the process of going there, we had to go down this other kind of mountain, and it was really slippery. And one of the idiots who had been there a while, but had looked down upon the new guys, he fell. Except his rifle dug into the ground, so he kind of launched like it was a pole vault past everybody on the way down. Which I thought was funny, but I knew because we couldn't even talk out there, didn't laugh. But we got a little farther down, and my team leader now is this biker type guy, stocky and mean. And he was walking point, and he slipped and fell. And I was behind him, and he looked at me, and I just, I started laughing, and he gave me the finger, and then he just pushed off, and he slid all the way down the hill, and then, because we had to go from here to over there, and we felt kind of safe. So then we all did, and it was this slip and slide kind of thing that everybody's like, hey, can we go back up and do it again? So it wasn't always bad times out there. We were set up in a place, and we got movement, and we all got on the radio and told them that somebody, we had movement coming towards us. We all got ready, and lo and behold, it was a rock. It was an ape, little guy. He was coming through the trees. Came and he stayed with us for a couple of hours, but which then that was a good sign because then we knew nobody else was around. Because even though we were supposed to be finding stuff, sometimes you don't mind when like when you're on watch at night with a starlight scope, and because now you can see in the dark, and your brain you don't see anything.
Do you know how many missions you went on? How many patrols?
I think a total of 17. Because while I was there, I went on a temporary assignment, and then in 1969, President Nixon pardoned the Vietnamization, where 3rd Marine Division was part of the first withdrawal, because they had been there the longest.
So, what did they pull you off duty to do?
Pardon me?
What else did you do when you were there?
Well, I went down to Da Nang to be basically an MP at an in-country R&R center, the real China Beach. Not quite as quaint as the TV show, but it was very nice.
Why did they pull you off your patrol to be an MP?
Well, the battalion had gotten a requisition to send one person down there. And my company at the time was the top company, so we got the first priority. And in the company, I was pretty much the top person that met the requirements of rank and everything else. And I didn't want to go because, again, I didn't want to leave the team. But my team leader, who had been there he was going to rotate in a couple of months anyway. He talked to me and he said, he wasn't even my team leader anymore. He was the team next door. He said, don't feel that way. Because they had split our team up to mix in with 2 other teams and some new people so that there was experience. And he's like, look, we've already gotten split up once. Himself and like 3 of the other guys, they were all going to rotate soon. He goes, it won't be the same anyway. Go. He said, this is an opportunity. Get out of here. I was like, nah, he's like, I'll kick your ass, Okay. So I went down to Da Nang, to the in-country R&R Center, China Beach. Was a combined group down there. There were representatives from all branches of the service. And at the time, when I had enlisted in the Marines, I had talked to one of my friends for work and enlisted with me on a buddy plan. Last time I saw him was boot camp, because his MOS was to be an office worker, and I was a grunt. And so after boot camp, we went our separate ways. But he was stationed in Da Nang, and actually where I had to go to bring my record books to this Marine compound is where he works. So I got to hook up with him again for a while, and we got to interact again. But China Beach was like, it went there, you're driving down the road and you went over this crest, and all of a sudden it was the South China Sea, and it's this beautiful white beach. There had been people who were there their whole tour. We had lifeguards who, that was what they did in Vietnam. They were a lifeguard on a beach. So there it was interesting, because out of all the people that were working there, myself and there's one other guy, Del Smith, he was from the 101st Airborne. We were the only 2 that had actually fought the war. And so we thought these other guys were a bunch of idiots, because they had, they were complaining about stuff. It's like, when I came down that first night and was able to get cold milk, it was like, wow. And silverware. We went to a mess hall and they actually had silverware. You used to eat out of a can, and so this was like, woo, So we were there, and that's where I got to use more of my Vietnamese. They would put me on the front gate a lot so I could deal with the civilians. And like I said, I talked to them because we had house girls and other people that worked on the base, so I would try and talk with them.
How long were you an MP at China Beach?
Really like 2 months.
So what were your duties? To patrol every day?
We had this compound on the beach. We were in the middle of the shore of Da Nang. On one side was just a village, the suburbs of Da Nang. And on the other side, there was a Korean Marine R&R center on the other wire. But we had guard posts around us. And, in one of them, you looked at some Philips Electronics. It was a factory. It was semi like being in the world again. It was just.
And did you have like a regular 9 to 5 job?
Yeah, we would work 6 to 6 to 12, 12 to 6, you know, they'd have like 6-hour shifts. Yeah, so you were a cop. And
Did you ever have to do anything as an MP?
not really.
No incident.
It was really skating duty there. Because it was the beach and it was an R&R center. So guys were constantly coming there on R&R. So they'd be there for 3 or 4 days, then they'd leave, and then another group would come. So most of any work that you had to do was because guys would be there and get drunk or something like that. Or, you know, I caught guys smoking pot on the beach, and it was easy to sneak up on them, which was stupid on my part. And they were like so paranoid, and I was like, yeah, you just can't do it here. You know, go down over there. I'm not going to arrest you for this. You know, it's like, I mean, I grew up in the 60s. I'd smoked pot before I went to Vietnam, before I joined the Marines. You know, it's like, I'm not going to put these guys in jail for, you know, give me a break. You know, the only time I had to arrest somebody was because there was a deserter there that somebody recognized who was there on R&R and said, hey, I was just down and I saw this guy and he was an Army guy. He had deserted like a month or 2 ago. So he went and pointed him out and I had to go arrest him. That's the only time I ever did anything military police wise.
Did you go back at all on patrol?
Well, while I was there, a couple of friends from Recon came down and they came to visit me, and we ended up getting in trouble in the city of Da Nang. Got arrested.
It's bad when the MP gets arrested.
Yeah, exactly. My being an MP didn't help. So then I was disciplined and sent back north to my unit. But at that time, we had already started to stand down because they were going to rotate back to the States, and my company, a skeleton crew of it, had already left. So I ended up just being in the headquarters company, and I became my commanding officer's driver because we had stolen a truck in Da Nang. And after that, when I came back, he goes, oh, what would you like to do? I said, oh, can I be a truck driver? He's like, no, but I'll make you my driver. And so that was my adventure there. So then we were there, back up north, and like I said, it was starting to wind down. And then the Thanksgiving of 1969, we were the last ones, the last 3rd Marine Division to leave, and we sailed to Okinawa, and then spent the rest of my time there.
In Okinawa?
Yeah, which now was all of a sudden totally different because it basically had been boot camp, you know, language school where you just were going to school every day, but you had to be a squared away Marine, to Vietnam, to, you know, not having to shine your shoes or anything. And now all of a sudden we were back and we were on a base, and now you had to be starched and when you weren't doing exercise.
So what were your duties there?
I was still my driver for my CO, and yeah, I helped out in the company office for a while. Because
how long were you there?
Just over 2 months.
Then you shipped back to the United States?
Yes, and then I got separated in California.
Bill, did you earn any medals or citations?
Just a combat action ribbon for being in combat. For a Marine, that's the same as a combat infantry badge for the Army.
Did you sustain any injuries?
Other than potentially exposure to Agent Orange, no. I mean, I did, but nothing to write home about, or that I would claim to.
I'm going to ask you a couple questions about daily life, and because you were in so dramatically different environments, it'll vary. How did you stay in touch with your family when you were in Vietnam?
Wrote.
Were you a good writer?
Yeah, I used to write. You know, I probably wrote them all, probably every day that I could. When you're out in the bush, you can't, but you know, when I was back, because I'd always tell, oh yeah, well, you won't be hearing from me for a while because we got to go out, you know, and I always played it down though. And then, when I got back, then I would write again. Even if it was we got shot out that day and came back, I'd write that. I said, well, they postponed it or something, because I didn't want them to worry.
So mail service was pretty good?
Oh, yeah. You could get surprising, you could probably get a letter faster to there than you do some places today. If my mother wrote me, mailed it today, I'd probably have it by Sunday or Monday. It wasn't that long it was kind of priority there. So that was good. And then once when I was in Da Nang, they had these things, Mars calls, so that you could call like on a radio kind of thing. It was hard to get. I did that. And of course I'm doing it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon over there, and it's 2 o'clock in the morning here, so my mother, that phone ringing in the middle of the night can't be anything good. But it was.
What was the food like?
Well,
you had two different kinds. You had food when you were in the field on a mission, and then food when you were back at your base.
I almost preferred eating out of a can. A lot of the things, for some reason, I always liked them. Except the ham and eggs chopped. It used to be one of my favorites, but I had eaten it the day Bob got killed, so I never ate it again after that. It just didn't taste the same. But we used to have ham and lima beans. Well, no, not so much over there. They kind of started getting rid of them. They were like left over from Korea, I suppose. And nobody liked them. But I like lima beans, so I did. So I could always trade and get that, and then have them. Then they'd have, if somebody had it, and I said, well, I'll give you this, but you got to give me like, peaches or pound cake or something like that along with it to take it. So that was always good. When we were back at our compound, we had a mess hall, but at lunchtime it was pretty much like sliced spam kind of things, which was sweating from the heat, and the food was just okay. I mean, I'd have to say I don't even remember it, so it couldn't have been that big a deal. Except on the Marine Corps birthday, we had turkey and shrimp and all. It was a big, and a cake. So that's a big deal in Marines.
How did you handle the stress of the job? I mean, recon is pretty stressful, so how did you deal with that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we were out right on the Laotian border, like the line was painted there somewhere, monitoring this trail. They were bringing stuff in to Vietnam, and we were sitting in the bushes, like where I am, and maybe to that air condition behind you, there people were walking by, So that's kind of like that thing when you're a kid playing hide and seek, And the first time we were sitting there, and we were like sitting back to back. It was just two of us. The rest of the team was away because we all couldn't be out there. We had found these like clump of bushes kind of thing to hide in. And so this guy, he was sitting behind me, and he was watching the trail that way, and I was watching it the other way. And I still remember exactly what it looked like. It was kind of low grass, and it went down. And in my view, probably maybe 200 feet away, then it dropped down the side of the mountain. So we were sitting there, and he's watching, I'm watching, we're kind of whispering to each other, when I get home, I'm going to go buy a birthday cake. I'm going to just lie and tell him like it's somebody's birthday just so I can have, a layer cake, kind of thing. You talk about all stupid stuff. Things that you don't have, or I'm going to get a Corvette. And then all of a sudden I see these two bushes coming up. And again, it was that Abbott and Costello moment of, here they come. And these two guys came, they were NVA, and they didn't know we were there. So they were just like walking along side by side, yakking away, and we just let them go by, and observed everything about them, their uniform, what kind of weapons they had and everything like that. And then we reported back, So we were there for like a week of doing that. We kept taking
that's
turns.
That's gotta be nerve-wracking.
It is. And, I don't know. They didn't know we were there. That was our job, It was And we were Marines, so we didn't have anything to be afraid of. But, you know, I probably even, because that wasn't it was stressful, but it was like we still, you know, I felt like we were in control, you know, that we had the advantage because we knew they were there. And if we had a fight, and that wasn't our intention. We didn't want anybody to know we were there. And actually, it was the last patrol I ran. It was the last night of the patrol. We were going to get extracted the next morning, and we had gone pretty much the beginning of the patrol. We had found some bunkers, and caves, and stuff. But then as it went on, we found less and less. We didn't have any more contact. So we got a little slack, and we did probably some things that contributed to our own being in a bad position. But what we would do at night, when we would set up, we would go and find a place where we were going to set up, and we would know that's going to be our harbor site is going to be right here. But we would do a thing and go and make believe we were in another one, stay there for a little while, and then just get up and leave, and then go to our final place. Then you sit and you listen, make sure nobody's following you. So we had set up, and we were on the edge of this tree line. Half the team was in the tree line, and part of the team was in the elephant grass. And all of a sudden, we had movement around us, and then they came with searchlights, and that was probably the scariest time of my life, probably still to this day, because they did online sweeps. And fortunately, they walked by right there, and they walked by right there.
What were you doing? Just sitting there?
Getting real small on the ground. And they even one time they shined a light right on myself and this other guy. And I don't know how they didn't see us. I mean, we were there. I mean, the light was on us. But, you know, we were in the edge of the jungle, too. Or maybe they didn't want to see us either, you know. And so we called in because like a recon unit, you are just a couple of guys, so they give you a lot of protection, and they always knew where we were, and it was called a polar plot. They would set at night, they would set artillery pre-position around you. So if you had to call it in, they would start firing it from like 500 yards out, and then you would adjust it. So that was in place. You always had the ability to get airstrikes if you needed them. So we called in the artillery, but we had to call it in on top of us. And the first rounds took out the searchlights. I don't know if they got them or they just turned them off, but that ended them. But we had to bring it in on top of us, so it was like a lot of shrapnel flying over our heads. And I know they fired because I had the radio, and the next morning, we did get out of there without a scratch. They fired over 200 rounds for us in the night. Yeah, because we had, at the beginning, it was just constant, and then we would do it like every 5 minutes and every 10 minutes, and, until finally, we knew that they knew that as soon as the sun came up, there'd be helicopters out there, or an AO out there. And sure enough, there was, but by then they had withdrawn, and we were able to get out of there. So that was.
Do you think that they knew you were there?
Oh yeah, they were looking for us.
Oh.
Yeah, and it was because we had gotten slack. We probably were noisy and stuff because we just knew that there's nothing happening. It was like you can't do that. And that was that was very. Very scary time, because that was the really only time, because you had a lot of time to think. You got all you don't want to fire your rifles, you got hand grenades out there, you got your knife and all of this, and you're thinking that, this is it, I'm never going home, I'm never going to see my family again. Then it switched to, sometimes somebody survives, or, hey, we're all Marines, what the hell? Doesn't mean, you're not losing there. We did, so we got out of there. But yeah, that was probably the scariest time. You know,
Did you do anything special for good luck?
I had one of my best friends growing up. His father gave me the night before I went in the Marines. He gave me a silver dollar and a silver lighter, which I lost somewhere. But the silver dollar actually made 2 tours of Vietnam. One with me and one with one of my buddies. So I always had that in my pocket because I always figured that would be maybe it'll stop a bullet or something, you know. But yeah, that was pretty much it.
Do you still have
St.
this?
Chris, I still have the silver dollar. Yeah, my friend, I gave it to him when he went to Vietnam, and he came back and he gave it back to me. And a St. Christopher medal, my other friend's mother gave me the day I left
Do
for
you
Vietnam.
still have that?
Yeah, I still wear it every day. And yeah, I never take it off. That's even though St. Christopher's not a saint anymore.
In some people's minds. What did you do for entertainment?
Well, we were back in our compound. We would sometimes we get USO shows would come, mostly, Korean or Filipinos. Sometimes you'd get Americans, once in a while Australian. We'd have a movie every once in a while. We got to watch The Sound of Music with flares in the background. And then because we had our own compound, we were Quang Tri Combat Base, which was a pretty big base. If you could go over to the main side, which wasn't always easy, they always had movies like every night. They had a PX there. You know, you could, in our hooch, we had electricity. We had a refrigerator, so we could have soda and stuff. And, when we came back, or make Kool-Aid. We tried making Jell-O, but it just wouldn't harden up,
Did you have any leave while you were in Vietnam?
I was scheduled to go on R&R, but I had put it off. And then when it came time that they were going to do a withdrawal, I never got to go anywhere. So,
What's your opinion of the officers that you served with?
they were all. I'd go anywhere with them, any of them. My one. Although we were pretty much on our own, so we didn't rely on, actual officers to tell us what to. In fact, in a recon team, you could have a corporal who would be the team leader, and we even had one time we took our platoon commander, who was the second lieutenant with us, and he was like 4th down the line chain of command because it was the team leader, the assistant team leader, even our corpsman was ahead of him because of experience. But he didn't look at, he could suggest something, but when you were in the team leader was the man. But for most of my time in Vietnam, my commanding officer was a captain, and he had been an enlisted man at one time, worked his way up, and he was a pretty decent guy. And my platoon commanders were both, I had 2 different ones, and they were both really people that you would, inspire you to do whatever needed to be done.
What was your opinion of your fellow Marines?
Like I said, to some people, personality-wise, you may not like them, but everybody always worked together. I could say 99%, or if we had 10 guys, it'd be 90%. I would always feel that I could depend on. One person, maybe not, but that was another issue.
Did you form any close friendships while you were over there?
At the time, but then we came back because we all came back at different times, and it you just some people I somewhat kept in touch with afterwards, and then in 1980 they had the parade in New York City. Yeah, I guess it was 1980, and at that I met a number. I didn't meet anybody that I had. Well, I did meet one guy who was in my company there. But I met all these other recon Marines, and we had all been at different companies, different times, whatever. But we formed a friendship, and we've kept in touch ever since. Then in the mid-'80s, a couple of guys from 3rd Recon, they started an association. And in, I guess it was 1986, we had our first reunion in Hilton Head. And in the course of the war, I think there was like 2,800 guys served in 3rd Recon. And they had been able to contact like 1,700. And out of that 2,800, like 300 got killed. You know, so now we're down to 25. So they got a big chunk of the battalion they were able to contact. And at the reunion, we probably had close to 1,000 guys. So I saw guys I hadn't seen in like 20 years. And it was like, it was 20 days. You know, some people were most are exactly the same. You know, if they were cool there, they're still cool. If they were a jerk, they still are, you know. And it was great. And in fact, one of the guys from my company, another friend of mine was in his team. And I said, hey, you know, whatever happened to Terry King? And he's like, oh, he's still in the Marines. You know, he stayed. So I said, oh, yeah. And he goes, oh, yeah. He goes, I talk to him every now and then. So I don't know, 6 months later, my phone rings one Saturday night. I answer it. It's like, Bill? As soon as I heard the voice, he's like, it's Terry. I just got back. I was deployed to Japan, you know, in case you were looking for me. Dude, I haven't talked to him for 20 years. You know, but then when he retired from the Marine Corps, he invited me. I went out to Camp Pendleton for his retirement. Some other guys from Recon, which his Marines thought that was wonderful, that we would still have that kind of bond. Yeah, so there's that kind of thing. And just, I don't know, maybe back in the fall, this guy that was my team leader, I had seen him at the reunion, and we had talked, and we kept in touch a little bit after that, but then we didn't. So through the association, I sent a note out and said, hey, you know anybody where Larry Sardi is? So somebody sent me his phone number. So I called him up. I was stuck in traffic coming home from Manhattan. I called his house. His wife answered. He got on the phone. You know, and I told him, I said, hey, Larry, it's Bill Moser. And it was like silence. I said, you know, like Vietnam. And he goes, I know. What's wrong? Yeah, and then it was like, what do you need? Nothing, I'm just calling you. But it's still that kind of thing and he was one of the, and I don't know why I never really, we didn't keep in touch because I always looked up to him, you know. And
So do you stay in touch now?
yeah, now we're talking at least once a month. You know, he lives in West Virginia now, and we're gonna hook up. I have to go down to Maryland. He's gonna go out and meet me. You know, but he's another guy. He's a guy that's exactly the same. I have. I need to go back to my friend Bob getting killed, but I guess I can do that right this second. When Bob got killed, he got killed on April 11th, 1968. And like I said, it's something that's still with me today. But for the longest time, if a day went by that I didn't think about him, I felt guilty. You know, and I think about him, dream about Vietnam, like almost every night. Not always bad, but it was just always there. It just wouldn't go away. And then one Sunday, I read an article, like in the color section of the paper, and somebody, this was back in, I guess it was back in the 80s, wrote an article about, how like when people got killed, what happened to them. You never knew what happened, and that's what happened. Bob, they took him off the helicopter, never saw him again. There was no wake or anything. So they told you how you could go about trying to track somebody's family down. So this was pre-internet. So I went and I got the book from the wall, because there it lists everybody and where they came from. So I looked up and I found, I had been to the wall already, but I got the book and I looked them up in there. And so it had Hartford, Connecticut. And he was from Ohio. I knew he was from Ohio, but the thing said Hartford, Connecticut. So I got a hold of the Hartford Current, talked to somebody there, told them what I was trying to do. They're like, yeah, okay, I'll give you a hand. So what it was is because on the wall, your address there is where you enlisted from, not necessarily where you lived. So when he got killed, it was in the Hartford Courant because actually his father lived somewhere in Connecticut. And I didn't know at the time that they were divorced. But so he had enlisted here. So the guy from the Hartford Courant, he read me the whole obituary, which gave me the name of the funeral home in Ohio. Go there. Got the guy. Oh, Bobby Scheidel? Yeah, I handled him. You know, like he knew. Oh yeah, the Scheidels, they live right up the road, but they moved, you know, a few years ago. You know, and I told him what I was trying to do, and you know, he told me where he was buried and stuff. So I ended up taking out an advertisement in the local newspaper saying I was looking for this family. And it was on the last day of the ad, I got a call, and it was one of his brothers who was Navy Seabee, who was over there at the same time, who lived in Georgia now. You know, and he was a little suspicious, you know, like, what do you want to know, you know, and then I told him. And then eventually I was on a business trip to Atlanta, and we met. And we stayed friends. So it was good for him because he got to find out what happened. And it was good for me. And all of a sudden, it was like weeks later, and it was like, wow, I haven't thought about him, and I haven't had any dreams. So at the time, I was going for some counseling, you know, and the doctor said that, yeah, you know, it's like you finally turned the page. You know, you finally had that you can put it aside. So his brother Dan and I, we still keep in touch. And in fact, he just, a few years ago, he had stayed in the Navy, or at least in the reserves, and he retired. So I got invited to that retirement too. So, yeah, so that was good. But so every year on April 11th to our association, I always send out a note, remember him. And this one guy who was the other new guy that was there at the time the guy's like totally out to lunch now. He was back then, he's no different, but he's telling me, you know, he contacted me, he came back, and it was just like, were we in the same place? You know? He's the kind of person that would milk the system, but that's... So yeah, I mean, there's no names involved there. But...
so did your nightmares stop?
Pardon? Yeah. I'd always have these nightmares of, you know, running out of ammunition or my rifle wouldn't fire. And then all of a sudden, when I do have the occasional still, it's the opposite. I don't have any problems of being able to defend.
When you came back to the United States, what was your homecoming like?
You know, I knew about the people, you know, protesting and stuff, and I kind of was expecting that. And my buddy and I, we ended up getting discharged together, the guy I enlisted with. We ended up hooking up at El Toro and got discharged together. I have to say that I didn't have a bad time. When we got to the airport, we were flying standby. The person at United Airlines was very snippy. Showed, oh, you're standby, just wait over there. We did. They came over and they gave us first class.
Wow.
And then while we were waiting in the airport, I wanted to call home. So there were these couples sitting there, older couples. And I said, would you do me a favor? Would you just watch my seat bag? And they're like, oh, yeah. So when I came back, and then my buddy and I, because we had both worked at IBM before, we were talking to these people. And they owned a Coca-Cola bottling distributorship in Iowa, and they offered us jobs on the spot. So for me coming home at that point was okay. I got home, it was fine, but there was nobody to talk to. Out of all the guys I grew up with, that really hung around together, like 6 of us, myself and only one other guy went. Everybody else had deferments or whatever. So there was nobody there to talk to. And one time at a mixer at Marymount College, I went with my friends and had somebody give me the baby killer and all that crap. I just thought, you have no idea what you're talking about, so just ignored them. Yeah, so I came back, I was home about 10 days and went back to work.
At IBM?
Yep. I bought a Corvette and I needed to make the car payments. Because my dream coming back was to hitchhike across and see America. I've been able to start doing that in the last few years, not hitchhiking, but see more of America. But yeah, I just went right back to work again.
And did you work at IBM for the rest of your career?
Yeah, 42 years. Well, I can't, because I got hired out of high school. I started there when I was 17. And then in one of the more recent purges back in 2009, I got cut loose. So now I work for a small accounting firm. That's the owners are former IBMers that I worked with years ago. And so I work for them.
Did you go back to school at all on the GI Bill?
Yeah. Well, actually, I really didn't use the GI Bill because IBM reimbursed for tuition. So when I came back, I started going back to school. I actually never did get my degree. I just took all the credits I needed for accounting and everything else. And I never really was gung-ho on school, so. Well, the overall thing, certain things, yes, I could sit there and listen and absorb, but for the most part. So I do regret that a little bit, but not that much.
Bill, how would you say your military experience influenced your thinking about war or the military?
It probably is the same as it was when I was a kid because I grew up on that being fed World War II. I know now from talking to other vets, I'm probably even influenced more because I was a Marine and we have a certain way that we're supposed to think, I guess we just do think. So if I had to do it tomorrow, I'd be right back there. I'd have to say, and in all honesty, if I could go to Afghanistan and replace somebody, I'd go. Because I look at it that I've already done it, and why put somebody else through it? I really don't want to see anybody else have to go through it. But if it has to be done, it has to be done. And, I want people I admire the most of the military people today because they did volunteer to be there. And I guess I'm still kind of that flag waving kind of person. I can't understand why, I worked with people when 9/11 happened. I was actually working in France at the time. And I had this young guy, and, he got all this hyped up about it. So I told him, so go and list. Oh, well, that's where I had one of my friends recon friends, whose son was a Marine. And he worked for, I'm going to say Price Waterhouse, I think, and had a very decent job. And he had been an officer in the Marines. And after 9/11, quit work and went back.
He went back to the Marines?
Yeah.
And they took him?
Oh, yeah. He's still in. He's like a colonel now or whatever. But, yeah, he just, was like, hey, I know what I got to do. So it's good to know that we still have people out there that are willing to do it,
Did you join any veteran organizations?
Only recently, about 10 years ago or so, I joined the Marine Corps League here in Danbury. And that was because on local cable, they were interviewing the person who was going to be the parade marshal that year for the Memorial Day parade. And he was an Iwo Jima vet. So I said, hey, I'm going to go join. So I did. That's the problem we have today is not, I think that with a lot of the veterans organizations, the bulk of them are all unfortunately passing away now because they're World War II vets, because they came back and there were so many of them. It was easier. In Vietnam, even I went to veterans organizations when I returned, and it wasn't a real open arms kind of welcome, at the VFW and that. So I just kind of blew it off. As a Marine, I find like Marine Corps, everybody, it doesn't make it, you don't look at it as what war were you when you were just a Marine. But now you have a smaller piece of the population has served, and they got too many other things to do. You know, life has changed. It wasn't like, okay, you were born and raised in Danbury and everything happened here, and so you could socialize here. Now it's people just move around and they don't have that same kind of, you know, they didn't grow up with all the other guys that all had a common experience. So unfortunately, it seems like it's going away from, it's just losing, it'll become like one organization maybe someday. There'll always be some people that are gung-ho, but for the most part, you know, so many Vietnam vets, you don't even know they're a vet because they just didn't have anybody to talk to about it, you know, and there were no real good organizations. You know, Vietnam Veterans of America is not an organization that I would say represents all Vietnam vets. Just personal opinion.
Yeah. How would you say your military service affected your life?
It happened at a very impressionable time. I went in when I was 19. So it kind of formed, just being in the military formed one part of me, and the experience in Vietnam another part. I mean, I still have that belief that, you know, you can't give up. You got to keep trying or whatever, no matter what it is, work or anything else that, I don't want to be the one to quit. So.
Bill, is there anything else that you'd like to add or any other memorable experiences that we haven't talked about?
There probably are, but I should have written really things down. 2 years ago, we had the traveling wall was here, and I participated in that. And you could probably ask the other people that worked on it. It was one of the most rewarding things because it was the first time to have that same kind of teamwork. Then when it was over, it was like, hey, not going to see you again, you know. So that was good. But at that time, the Danbury Historical Society asked me to speak, and I spoke to them. So that's my only other experience of talking publicly about it. You know, you can BS with the guys, but for them, like I said, most of my friends, I don't have any military. I don't have anything in common with them. So it's, they don't ask and I don't tell. So. But and for a lot of people just, unless you've been there, you don't understand. You know, it's people will think they understand, or I guess somewhat an example. There's pictures that float around on the internet all the time, and it's like while you were sleeping in your bed, you know, and they show guys, you know, sleeping on a tank or this and that. Yeah, so. It goes with the territory. That's your job. When you're sleeping on the ground, you're not thinking, "Oh boy, I wish somebody else is sleeping in their bed." It's you got a job to do. It's a whole different thought process, way of life. And unless you've lived it, you'll never understand. You know, you really, like the military and the Marines in particular, it becomes a cliquey organization. You only know your tribe. You know?
Well, Bill, thank you for your service and thank you for listening.
You're welcome.